Hi players, Dzień dobry from Wrocław. My name is Asaf and welcome to my channel Easy Board Games. In this video we're going to have some fun giving you 10 tips for 10 board games that I wish I would have known when I started playing them. Now let's set a little bit of rules for this video. The first rule is don't talk about this video. Stupid jokes aside, let's get serious. But in this video, the tips that I'm going to give you are needed to be taken with a grain of salt. What do I mean? Of course, even though I played all of these games more than a few times, obviously I cannot compete with someone who has more than 200 plays in that specific game. So if, for example, later on I'm going to give you one or two tips about War of the Ring, obviously I cannot compete with someone who is playing this game already for years upon years upon years. So just this is some sort of tips for maybe beginners or maybe something that you haven't paid attention to. And in any case, those tips are something that I wish I would have known when I started playing these games. The second rule for this video is that I might be wrong, okay? And in that case, if you feel that the tip is maybe not so good for you, if you are more experienced player than I am, then please let me know. Let's discuss about it. That's of course one of the best things that I like in this hobby is just the ability to discuss different board games and different strategies. Now, just before we're getting started, all of the games besides one that I'm going to make a video for a little bit later, for all of these games, I have at least one video that can be a review, a how to play, playthrough, solo mode, or regular, so feel free to check those out on my channel. Having said all of that, let's dive into the first game, and that is a game that I actually don't currently have in my collection. That depends, of course, when you're watching the video, but I called it a few days ago for now, and that is going to be Luthier. Now, Luthier is a hidden bidding worker placement kind of game where we're going to craft different music instruments. Also, we're going to perform some concerts. We'll be able to get new patrons and get some bonuses from them. And I feel that the best tip that I can give you for Luthier is to pay attention to what is the most important action that you would like to perform in this turn and don't take risk with it. What do I mean? So since this is a hidden bidding worker placement, when you're going to place your disc with a specific number, the higher the number is, of course, if you're adding more apprentices, that is going to increase that value. That means that you're going to take the action first. So you need to analyze in each one of your turn what is the most critical action that you 100% need to perform in order to make the rest of your turn make sense for you. In that moment, if you did take the risk and you thought, maybe the other players are not going to engage too much with that location, so I'm going to invest some other stuff in different locations in order to have maybe some more bonuses, your entire strategy for the turn, if not for the game, can collapse if you didn't perform your action first in a specific location. So, if taking a new patron is something that is very important for you, then you need to make sure that you're going to invest as much as possible in order to ensure that you're taking that action first. Again, this is coming from my experience with the game after multiple plays, and I saw more than one time my strategy or other players' strategy just collapses just because they took a risk and didn't resolve the first action first. That was very critical for the rest of the round. So later on, I managed to do some risk assessment and tell myself, okay, this is the most important thing, so this is where I'm going to invest most of my resources. Moving on from Luthier, let's take another game, and we have here Frostpunk. So Frostpunk, the board game, if you don't know, is a very brutal game about a resource manager, about managing some sort of your city/colony in a post-apocalyptic world where resources are scarce, people are hungry, getting sick, die. You're going to have multiple moral decisions or multiple decisions in general to take in this game that are going to affect future rounds. I feel, again, after losing a lot of times in Frostpunk, I feel that the best tip that I can give you is wood. Because all of the buildings that you can build need wood. That is the most important resource that you can have in this game. Some of you might say, Asaf, but what about some coal, right? Because we need to feed our generator in order to receive some heat. And I agree with you. But if you have enough wood, then you can build one of the buildings that when you're spending wood there, you're going to receive 4 coal in return. And that is a lot. 4 coal can definitely be the difference between dying in the scenario, having a lot of people sick, or actually managing it. So wood is the most important. At the beginning, wood is a little bit more easy to get because you have some piles of wood next to the generator. So in the first tier, let's call it like that. Later on, I would advise to have as quickly as possible a sawmill in a place that is surrounded by trees, and then of course later on to have a wall drill so you can have just a constant supply of wood. Not only that, but actually when you're going to have more refugees coming into your city, you need a place to house them because the weather can get very brutal, especially just for example, the first scenario that you're going to have 2 storms, you need a place to just provide for them shelter. Again, that is of course wood. So if you have a lot of wood, you can immediately build more bunk houses and later on even houses just to make sure that your people are not getting sick. And that will of course make it more difficult later to have more workers in order to execute more actions. Moving on after Frostpunk, let's talk about another game that I absolutely love, and that is John Company, the 2nd edition. Maybe this is not a game that you will find in every household, but I definitely recommend for you this game if you are into negotiations. In John Company in general, you are a group of people that are running a company. Since this is a semi-cooperative game, what you are doing is trying to hold a company successful. Sometimes, or even most of the time, it doesn't really succeed. So you can even start betting against your own company and try to snag the victory from the person who is in the lead. Now, the tip that I can give you in John Company is don't forget your writers. Every time that you're going to choose one of the actions at the beginning of your round, if you're going to choose the same action in the next round, you can do it actually twice. So especially in the beginning when money is very tight and ships maybe don't have a lot of impact on the game, I'm talking to you again about the first and second round, I think that you should invest in writers, because if by the second round you have already 3 writers in a specific region, that is going to make you a very powerful person and you're going to have a lot of leverage when you are negotiating. John Company is probably the longest video that I have on my channel. It's like a 2-round playthrough with full explanations. So don't be intimidated about it, because I'm really teaching the game as I play, and I think that the game is much less complex than it seems to be. Maybe just the India events, which is one of the phases towards the end of the round. But also in BGG, you can find really good flowcharts for how to navigate through these events in an easier way. John Company, check it out. That's my tip for this game. Moving on to Uprising. Uprising is a 4X cooperative game. The best tip that I can give you about Uprising is that you should consider the areas where you are performing the attack. So the thing is, because you are having these hexagons that you're going to reveal the more you're exploring the map, each tile is going to have a specific parameters, okay? A specific ground that is going to affect your combat. And you need to take advantage of that area. If you have an area that is good for archers, make sure that you're being a little bit more patient and you're building the army that you can with more archers. That can be really the difference between a successful combat and just being frustrated that the game doesn't work well for you. Now, with the second expansion, Titan of the First Age, you do have a way to mitigate your dice roll just by taking these crystals that you have there and re-roll your dice, but still, it is going to be to your advantage to be a little bit more patient and attack or even defend, because you can a little bit predict where the chaos or the empires are going to move towards, and make sure that the battle that you are fighting is going to be in an area that is playing to the advantage of your specific army. I would actually prefer to wait even a little bit more and have 2 sets of armies just to make sure that I'm navigating through this battleground successfully. So, Uprising, another great game that I absolutely love. Let's put it over here, cover John Company. And let's move to another game that also I don't have already in my collection, and that is Unconscious Mind. Now, I played this game a bunch of times, and I feel that the best tip that I can give you is to pay attention to your tableau for a few reasons. First of all, if you have completed your tableau, that is going to be worth for you a lot of victory points at the end of the game. And not only that, because the different actions that you're going to take are going to tell you how many spaces your ink bottle is going to move, and then you will be able to resolve either the column or the row. The more of these tiles that you have in your tableau, the better actions and the better resources you're going to have. So I saw a lot of comments telling people you should try to maximize your treating patients action, having 2 patients that you can treat with the same action, which I agree to, but at the same time, if you don't have a lot of resources, trying to accumulate those resources in order to treat really 2 patients at the same time can be a little bit brutal and set you back. For me, the best tip that I can give you is really spam even your tableau. Just put there as many tiles as you can. At some point, it's just going to work, because every time you're going to move with your ink bottle, you're just going to receive a lot of resources. I'm not saying that just take absolutely 100% whatever that is available, but also don't overthink it. If you see that you have some options, take them, because the moment that you're completing a row, you have also these 2 things that are printed on your player board that you will be able to execute as well. And that is super important, to have just a completed row or column. So the faster you can have completing this tableau, the better it will be and the easier it will get to treat those patients and have those victory points. Moving on to another game, let's take Dark Ages, which is really one of my favorite games. Dark Ages is a 4X game, can call it like that, even though exploration here is not a super big thing. So I don't know how much I'm comfortable with saying this, but in any case, 4X game that is taking place, depends on which box you have, because we have 2 of those, either in Western Europe or in Central Eastern Europe. Here we're going to have different factions that have different abilities. You will be able to, it's a great civilization game, to be honest. And also the worker placement system over here is amazing, because thanks to that system of like pushing disc and having like reactions, the downtime here is very low. Feel free to check out the review that I did for this game. I think that the best tip that I can give you if you're just starting to play is to upgrade your most basic units as quickly as possible. Have like the 2nd tier. Why is that? Because when you're going to go to a different area in order to take control over it, you will want to settle in. That is something that you'll be able to do, and that will require of you a certain amount of people, okay? It can be either archers, cavalry, doesn't really matter, in order to take that first farm and place it in that territory. If your most basic unit, the infantry, doesn't have a higher level, or even the archer, that means that you will need to go a lot of units relatively to the stage of the game, and instead of having still nice army in that territory, you're going to have less units. So because upgrading the 1st tier unit is relatively easy, doesn't require a lot of resources, that is the best tip that I can give you. Upgrade it before you're settling in, before you even go into the next territory. And also, not to mention, of course, that the first battles against the barbarians can really set you back if you don't have 1 or 2 first successful battles. That can probably, I'm not going to say completely destroy your strategy, because you can have multiple ways to win over here, because this game has victory points, but I still think that this is the best advice that I can give you. So that is Dark Ages. Let's move on to my number 1 game of all times. That is Trickerion, Legends of Illusion. What can I tell you guys? I absolutely love this game. This is a Euro game, kind of a heavy one, where you're going to play an illusionist, and you're going to have like your team. You're going to send them to different places to take resources, learn new tricks, perform them in the theater, and so on. Now, it depends if you're playing only the base game or you're playing with the expansion, Dalgard's Academy. So I think that if you're playing the base game, which is, I think until today, my favorite way of playing this game, the best tip that I can give you is your economy. And I'm talking about money that you're going to have. I think that a lot of players, especially in the beginning, are trying to buy too many materials, or trying to have already their 2nd tier tricks. And that is going to cost them some money, because not all the time you have enough prestige in order to get those tricks. So I think that you should invest in money, especially in the beginning. If you can send one of your workers that is not the illusionist relatively early in the game to the bank in order to take some money, and then send actually your illusionist to the market so you can have more action points, and by that buy more materials for a discount, I feel that it's going to leave you enough space to later worry about it less until you're performing your first one or two tricks. And that means that you still have money at the end of the round to pay the salaries for your team. Now, I think that, of course, the Dark Alley expansion, which is for me not an expansion, it's how the game should be played from the get-go. You have some cards for downtime that are going to give you a lot of advantage if you manage to snag a card that is going to give you some bonuses again for the money. For example, you're going to take one of the dice, you're going to receive the money that it shows, and then you're going to roll it again and you're going to receive some extra money. So the first tip again is to take care about your economy, about your money. And the second one is never, ever neglect the Dark Alley. I think that the only time that I'm not going to the Dark Alley is maybe in the last round where I need to do multiple stuff. But those cards in the Dark Alley should not be ignored, and you need to try and go there every single round. Those cards not only worth victory points at the end of the game, prestige points, but also can give you a huge advantage. In the beginning, that's what I'm doing, Dark Alley, in order to get cards for the downtown and try to get as much money as possible relatively early in the game. So that was Trickerion. Let's place the box over here on the other stuff that I have for another game that is on my table. So let's present it already. And that is Dead Reckoning by John DeClaire, with an amazing mechanism of card crafting. Here we're going to play a ship's crew, and we'll have different ways that we can go. Either we're going to go full piracy, or we can be like more of a merchant ship or stuff like that. Privateer, navigating between the different islands and trying to accumulate more gold in order to have more victory points at the end of the game. I think that the best tip that I can give you for Dead Reckoning is, when you're having more of these advancements, okay, more of these cards that you're going to sleeve into your crew cards, you need to make sure that you spread them. I know sometimes it's very appealing to have 1, 2, or 3 cards that are heavily sleeved, but that means that all your other crew members are going to be not so strong. And because you're cycling through your deck again and again, you want to make sure that most of your cards have at least one advancement in there. So the actions that you're going to take there, even if they're not upgraded, if they're still level 1 or 2, you want to make sure that you have more than one effect on that card. I think that can be the difference between a successful game and a less successful game. And we're moving on to the next game. Another brutal game, that is This War of Mine, that was published, of course, by Awaken Realms, designed by Jakub Wisniewski, Kuba, and Michal Oracz. This War of Mine, just like the video game, you're going to be in a shelter with a group of people, and you will try to survive. You will go out there to scavenge during the night. You will try to do some stuff during the day. You're going to try and block some invaders that are going to try and steal your food, that can mainly cause some injuries to your characters that are staying on guard. There's a lot in this game. I did a review for it. This game for me is just top notch. I think that the 2 tips that I can give you about this game is, first of all, to try and build some traps in order to gain some food, because food can get tricky to have. And the second one, at least that is what worked for me the most, is to try and close all the holes that you have in your shelter, because that is going to reduce at least the level of coldness that you have in your shelter. So that is going to prevent your characters from very quickly spiraling into sickness, and that means less action points that each character can take during the day phase. So closing those holes and having as quickly as possible some traps in order to gain some food, that is, in my opinion, the best tip that I can give you, at least for the beginning. Moving on to the last game that I'm going to present to you, and that is War of the Ring. Now, again, you guys, just like I've said before, I cannot compete with people that played more than 200 times. So this is the game I think that I fear the most in giving you some sort of a tip for. But for me, the best tip that I can give you is about combat. When you want to attack, you need to make sure that you have some combat cards that can support that specific attack. I remember in my first few games, I just wanted to attack. I thought that I have an army that is strong enough, and it doesn't matter if you're playing with the Shadow or the Free People. I thought that my army is sufficient. I just went into it and the combat cards just didn't match the situation that I have. And fights that I had that I'm going to win easily actually dragged into a nightmare. So be patient before attacking and plan your attack in a way that your combat cards can support the army that you have there. Also, don't neglect, especially if you're playing with the Shadow, don't neglect your Nazgul, because those leaders can have a lot of impact, of course, when we're talking about rerolls. So again, I'm a little bit scared about this one. If you are a War of the Ring veteran and you feel that this advice maybe is not so good or you have a better one, please write to me a comment, but not only for War of the Ring, but for each one of the games that I presented in this video. And with that, guys, thank you so much for watching. I truly appreciate it. Take care, and I'll see you next time.